Okay, so now what we will do is we'll continue with the revision plan that we were doing. Okay, so moving on, what we'll do is so what is meant by living? Give 4 defining features of life forms. Yeah, this is the long answer. I don't think I don't want to give that entirety. So this is like quite a straightforward question. So what is living organism, and then like define any 4 living forms of defining features they are asking. So the 4 defining features that we can write is, we can write the first one is, yeah, it is an NCRT, direct NCRT question only. 4 defining features: cellular organization, they are asking for defining feature. So which means growth and reproduction will not come. Cellular organization, metabolism, then you have consciousness, then what is the fourth thing? And response to stimulus. These are the 4 defining features of living organisms. You have to explain this and write. Moving on to the next question. A scientist has come across a plant which he feels is a new species. How will he go about its identification, classification, and nomenclature? Okay, so what he has to do is the question. It is not as simple as like he will use the keys. What he has to do is like it is a long process. Okay, the first thing is you have to define what is identification and how he can identify. The second thing that you will be writing is, here in this question they have specifically asked about classification. You have to tell what is classification. and you have to write how can we classify. The third thing is what is nomenclature, and you have to write how to name. So this is how you will be answering. Okay, you can refer the notes. So identification can be done with the help of taxonomical aids. Okay. After that, you are classifying it, seeing the relationship between different organisms. What kind of relationships you will see, you will have to mention it. Then giving the name is the third point. Naming is like binomial nomenclature. You have to explain about nomenclature. Third question, Brassica campestris Linn. Give the common name of the plant. The plant is mustard. Okay. Brassica campestris is like mustard. Just a second. Brassica campestris is also called as Brassica rapa. Okay, there are two names for the same plant. Yeah, it is not there in the book. Brassica rapa. You might have to see this in this chapter, the other chapter. You will be able to find it in the chapter morphology. Okay, in morphology there is this thing. You will be able to find this particular thing in the chapter. You might see this in the heading Leguminosae. Or if they might have given Fabaceae. In that particular chapter, you will see this thing. No, no, no. You need not worry about these things in the exam. Exam is strictly inside the book, textbook, in the first chapter. Okay, but when you're talking about NEET or the main exam, you might have to worry about it. So it's what we call it as mustard. So the first question is answered. Second question, what are the two parts of the thing denote? The first part will denote genus name, and the second part will denote specific epithet. You can also use the word generic epithet. Why are they written in italics? Because of the rules of nomenclature. What is the meaning of the Lin ended, written at the end of the game name? It indicates what? It indicates scientist who classified it. Okay, second question is easy. Third question is easy. Now go for the fourth question. What are taxonomical aids? Give the importance of herbaria and museums. How are botanical gardens and zoological parks useful in conserving biodiversity? This is theoretical question which you will be able to read the textbook and answer. I am not waiting for it. Define taxon. What is meant by taxonomic hierarchy? Give a flow diagram from the lowest to the highest category for a animal and the plant. Okay, so you can define taxon, it is not a problem. You can also tell what is taxonomic hierarchy. So taxon, what is taxon? Can someone quickly define it? So you can write it here. Each category in the taxonomic hierarchy is called as what? Taxon. Okay. Second part. What is meant by taxonomic hierarchy? If you're talking about taxonomic hierarchy, you can use this thing. You write this part. So what is it trying to tell? Read this and you have to skim and scan and write it. Okay, classification is not a single step process but involves hierarchy of steps in which each steps represent a category, a rank or a category. Since the category is part of overall taxonomic arrangement, it is called as taxonomic category. And all categories together constitute taxonomic hierarchy. So how will you write this thing? You can concise it and write the steps involved in classification is organized in an order. Okay. This overall arrangement is called taxonomic hierarchy. Okay, so if you can skim and scan and write it, it's not a problem. But if you think that you would not be able to precisely bring about the meaning of it, just study those lines and write it. It is not a problem. So you can just write these things also, not a problem. These 4 lines you can memorize and write it. There are some people who will not be able to write it on their own, so that's still fine. But while you're writing on the own, there are some advantages, there are some disadvantages. If you want to write it on your own, you need to understand the concept, and then like you have to bring about the exact meaning, whatever is conveyed in the 4 sentence. Just in case if you're not able to bring about that thing in your own language in a very precise way, then you might have to go for remembering this sentence and then like writing it. Am I clear? It is the process of arranging various organisms into successive levels of biological classification. It is not the process. Taxonomic hierarchy is not a process. It is the order. Okay. If I am writing it, all these things together, that arrangement, in that arrangement, I will start the sentence. If I'm writing it on my own, I will start the sentence with the correct word that will define it. What is taxonomic hierarchy? Is it a process or it is an order? It is the order in which the classification is arranged. So you need to understand that the simple definitions, I mean, like, I will tell you where you guys will go wrong in writing the own sentences. Say, for example, if I'm going to ask you a question, define boiling point. Okay. Most of us, what will write is, what you will be writing is, you will be writing, it is the point. You will write it like that. It is the point at which, it is not a point. What is boiling point? If it is a temperature. Okay. So, and similarly, if I'm going to write, define boiling, if I'm going to ask you, you people will start the sentence like with saying like it is something. Okay. But what it is, boiling is a process. This is the correct word that will define that thing. It is a process after which you might know the answer. So the correct first word should be important. It is, what is boiling point? Boiling point is the temperature. So similarly, what is hierarchy? The hierarchy, it is the order. So if this first word is going wrong, I cannot give mark for it. Okay, so which means like you need to precisely define. So that is what, till you understand how to define it, it is okay to go by the book. I'm not asking you to memorize it and write it without knowing it. But there are certain things like definitions which need to be like written in the exact form. Yeah, you can call it as ranking. It is not a problem. Okay, so that is the point driven there. So they are asking you to give a flow diagram of a lowest to highest category for a plant or an animal. This one you should be able to see it and write it. You see, you need to go for it. You have to memorize this table at least. At least animals and plants. One animal, one plant. I want you to memorize it and then keep it. Okay, from this table you need to study what happens to the number of individuals and number of shared characters as we go up on the taxonomic hierarchy. As you go up the taxonomic hierarchy, yeah, you can also go for Panthera Leo. It is not necessary that you have to know all these things, but knowing all these things will help you in NEET, because NEET questions are mostly taken from the corner of the book only. Okay, so you can do something like Mango, and then like you can go for like something like Panthera Leo also. You can go, not a problem. So as you go, what happens to the number of individuals and the number of shared characters as you go up the taxonomical hierarchy? The characters will decrease. A decrease agunda. The similarities will reduce. The similarities will reduce. Okay, sixth question. A student of taxonomy was puzzled when his professor told to look for a key to identify a plant. He went to his friend to clarify the what key the professor was referring to. Okay, what would the friend explain to him? I think they are asking you what is key in a different way. You just have to write what is key. It is a taxonomic key. A taxonomic key will be made up of statements, a couplet, which will contain contrasting characters. Okay, each statement in that couplet is called as a lead. It will take you to another couplet, and which will help to identify an animal or a plant. Okay, you have to read this paragraph key, and then like whatever is given here, you have to precisely write it. Okay, it's a theoretical question again. Metabolism is a defining feature for all living organisms without exception. Isolated metabolic reactions in vitro are, are not living things, but surely living reactions. Comment. Okay, what they are trying to tell you is metabolism is a defining feature. It is seen in all organisms. Okay, and the second point is saying isolated metabolic reactions in vitro are not living things, but surely living reactions. They are asking you to comment. Say, for example, I can prove in a small conical flask that respiration can happen. Last year in 10th standard, you might have studied about this germination reaction to check whether that carbon dioxide is evolved. You might have studied this reaction. When this germination is there, like they would keep this thing and then they will try to prove that carbon dioxide is released during germination. So this is a process which is like happening outside the organism. This we call it as a in vitro. The word in vitro means in laboratory. Or say for example, I can take glucose. And then I can take saliva separately. And I can pour it here. And digestion would still happen. Which would be still what? Which is still what we call it as this thing, digestion, which is like kind of like which will still happen. So They are telling how is this particular thing, isolated metabolic reactions are happening outside, but it is surely not living reaction. So they are asking you to comment. So here in this particular category, they would give explanation about it. Let us see what is given in the textbook. Metabolic reactions can be demonstrated outside the body in cell-free systems. An isolated metabolic reaction outside the body of an organism performed in a test tube. Hence, while metabolism is a defining feature, organisms without exception, isolated metabolic reactions uh, are not living things but are surely living reactions. So you have to explain why it is not a living thing, but it is just living reactions. Okay. Okay, listen, children. Yesterday I told the other batch, I did not tell you this batch, I think. So let me just clarify it. First of all, I did not consider any deleted portion. Okay. I have asked questions from wherever and whatever I have thought. Okay. So I did not consider any of the deleted portion at all. The reason being is like if you're thinking of giving NEET, the NEET has not officially, NTA has not officially come for what? Come with a case where like they have reduced the portion. So I think it is still fine to read it all. And we have been reading these 3 chapters for quite some time. We have written so many tests in objective type test. So it shouldn't be a difficult thing. Okay, moving on further. Do you consider a living person or a living person living in coma, living or dead? I think it is discussed here in the textbook directly. Mm. So you read this thing. So from here, starting that thing, you have to, the answer will be somewhere till this thing. Almost till this particular point, it will be there. Metabolic reactions will still take place. And then still there are tissue interactions which will happen. Though the person is not having the property of consciousness, still we can consider him as living because of something. What is that something? Because of the underlying metabolism taking place and all certain things happening inside. Okay, so the answer is here inside the textbook only. Moving on further, what is the similarity and dissimilarity between the whole moong dal and the broken moong dal in terms of respiration and growth? Based on these parameters, classify them into living and non-living. So whole moong dal will be able to regenerate into a new organism when it is like sown inside the soil. Broken moong dal will not be able to do it. What is it basically? It is like a dicotyledon which has covered the embryo in between. Okay. So the moment you are breaking it open, what is happening is the moment it is broken down, the embryo is exposed to the air and it will die. Okay. So basically your groundnut also is the same case. Groundnut is also a dicotyledon. It will have two cotyledons. So each of that side is a cotyledon. And in between the two things, you will see the embryo connecting. So this embryo is essential for growing and respiring. Okay. If you're talking about a whole thing, it will be having a small pore here, which is called as germ pore, which will allow exchange of gases. Okay. So the moment it is broken, it will not be able to give rise to a life. So you have to classify whether it is living or non-living. So you should be able to tell that. So this germ pore will allow what? Exchange of gases, water can get inside, and then it will be able to generate into a life form. The last question. Some of the properties of tissues are not constituent of its cells. Give 3 examples to support it. So what is the thing? You can give about a tissue. They are asking examples. Properties of tissues are not the properties of are not constituents of its cells. Give 3 examples to support the statement. What can you give? You have to give such that a tissue is there. The property of the tissue is different from property of the cells that are making it. Skin and skin cells. What is the thing that you can write? Many people are trying to tell about skin and skin cells. How is it different? Yeah, you can write skin basically. Skin is one thing which you can write. What is that thing that you can write in skin is skin is like made up of multiple level of cells, multiple layer of cells that have different property. Some of the, this is the 10th question is what we are seeing now. Some of the properties of tissues are not the constituent of its cells. There are some properties present in the tissue which is not the property of the cell. Okay. The first one is multiple layer of cells that have different property. What is skin? Skin is a like multiple layer of cells. It is a tissue. Okay, which will have different property. Say for example, epithelial cells is present in the outside. The epithelial cells are responsible for protection. Okay, below that you will have some glandular cells. These glandular cells are responsible for secretion. Okay, so similarly there might be nervous cells which will be connected, which will be responsible for communication. So you have all these things. A skin as a tissue, if you're seeing, these are all the properties of a skin. But if you're looking at the individual cell, it will offer only one particular function. Okay, so that is one thing you can write. Then second thing, some of the properties of the tissues are not the property of the constituent cells. Blood transports oxygen, but WBC in blood do not carry oxygen. You can write this thing as a point. One more thing. The liver, the pancreas secrete insulin, but the pancreatic cells but all pancreatic cells do not secrete insulin. You can try to tell about stomach also. Stomach will secrete hydrochloric acid, but the mucus cells in stomach will not produce hydrochloric acid. Stomach is made up of multiple level of cells. You have something called as oxyntic cells, you have something called as goblet cells. Like that, you have different types of cells. All the cells will not do all the function. That is what they are trying to ask. With this thing, we are completing the questions of the first chapter. Are you able to understand the last question? Okay. Moving on further. Show the last slide once. Yeah, I'll show you the last slide once. Yeah, you can write it. If you want to write it, you can like tell it here. Skin produces oil, but the non-glandular epithelial cells do not produce oil. Okay, children, if you're done, you let me know so that I can move on. At least I want to do some 2-3 questions in the next chapter. Okay, the first question is this. What is the principle underlying the use of cyanobacteria in agricultural fields for crop improvement? Okay, the first one is, hey, who said pancreas is not a tissue, man? Pancreas is an organ which is made up of multiple tissues. You can, if you want to be more specific, the endocrine part, the endocrine tissues of pancreas, if you want, you add this word, if you are more specific about it. The endocrine tissues of pancreas will secrete. If you are talking about the endocrine tissue, it is called as islets of Langerhans. Okay, which will comprise of multiple cells, alpha, beta, delta, gamma. The beta cells only will produce insulin. Okay. The endocrine tissues of pancreas will secrete insulin, but all pancreatic endocrine cells will not secrete insulin. Alpha will produce a different hormone. Beta will produce insulin. Yeah. So moving on further, what is the principle underlying the use of cyanobacteria? Cyanobacteria fixes nitrogen, atmospheric nitrogen. Cyanobacteria will fix what? Fixes nitrogen with the help of what? Some structure. What is the structure called as? With the help of dash. Heterocyst. Second question. Suppose you accidentally find an old preserved permanent slide without a label. If you are in your effort to identify it, you place it the slide under microscope and observe the following features: unicellular, well-defined nucleus, biflagellate, one flagellum lying longitudinally and the other transversally. What would you identify it as? Can you give the kingdom to which it belongs to? If it is unicellular and well-defined nucleus, it is Protista, and since it is having two flagella, it is called as dinoflagellate. So the answer is Protista, dinoflagellate. The third thing, how is five kingdom classification advantageous over two kingdom classification? It is elaborate. It is trying to consider all the possibilities. Okay, five kingdoms. Classification is elaborate and detailed. It considers mode of nutrition, cellular arrangement, reproduction, and other properties bringing different kingdoms. Separate. Okay, so something of this sort you have to write. Fourth question, polluted water bodies have very high abundance of plants like nostoc and oscillatoria. Give reasons, they are asking. Okay, so basically what happens is organic matter is more, what will happen? the organisms will increase. When the organic matter is more, the organisms will increase. This will reduce the oxygen level in water and pollution goes up. Okay, this is the relation of how water is polluted. What is increasing? Organic matter. When it is increasing, what will happen to the organisms which are growing? It will increase. Okay, when more organisms are increasing, what will happen to the oxygen level in water? The dissolved oxygen will come down because oxygen will be consumed by all these organisms. And when the oxygen level is coming down, what is happening? The pollution will go up. This is the basic idea of water pollution. Why they are going up? Because the reason is organic matter is increasing. The polluted body will have lots of organic matter which can be consumed by these organisms. Because they will have abundance of nutrients. Are chemosynthetic bacteria autotrophic or heterotrophic? I think it is a direct question. They are autotrophic because they are producing foods on their own. The common name of a pea is simpler than its botanical scientific name, Pisum sativum. Why then the simpler common name is not used instead of the complex thing? Because to standardize across many places. So the scientific name gives a standard way in which to avoid confusions at various places. Okay, a virus is considered as a living organism and an obligate parasite when inside a host cell, but virus is not classified along with bacteria or fungi. What are the characters that are similar to non-living objects? I think I have given the answer for this thing. You might know the answer. Okay, virus is acellular. It is not having a cell. Outside the body, it is considered as a living, non-living creature. It does not have metabolism on its own. Like that, you have many points. Consider giving 2-3 points at least. In the 5 kingdom classification, we take how many kingdoms are eukaryotes? So you just write 4 and then like write all the name of the 4. You can write 4 and you write it is Protista, fungi, plantae, and animalia. Okay, so with this thing we'll stop here. We can just move ahead with short answers and then sell tomorrow. Okay. Okay, children, study well. Let us meet tomorrow. One, two, three, 4, 5, 6.